Oh, Wesley, thank you so much for being here. Great having you. Welcome. It's a great honor to have you here today. And like I said, our topic tonight. Oh, hello.
I'm speechless, but I have to speak. It's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We're going to be talking about leadership. And this is a topic that means many things to many different people. And before we even dive in, I'd love to hear your perspective, your definition of what is ethical leadership and why is it important in the first place?
Let's begin with birth. When each and every one of us were born from a mother and a father. And the mother's selfless, loving care was the beginning of our being influenced by leadership. You know, the ethics, the love, the selfless care of the mother, so much is what we are today. It's the foundation of all other characteristics and qualities of life, is the leadership we receive. And from a perspective of where I'm from, leadership is reciprocal. The gifts that we receive, we want to share. And it is historically quite evident that what leaders do on every level is what defines the values of a family, a company, a society, to a large extent a nation. Because values are sacred. There is a well-known saying, if you lose your wealth, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. If you lose your character, you lose everything. And I remember a few years ago, I was speaking with the CEO of a very large company in Chicago. This person is who I was speaking to in his office. He was a multi-billionaire. And he heard me quote the same little statement on a video. And he said, I believe that so much. He said, I have so much money, and I have so much power, and so much influence in the world. And then he went on a whole list that took about 2 or 3 minutes of all the things that money cannot buy. It cannot buy peace, it cannot buy happiness, it cannot buy love, it cannot buy good relationships. And he went on and on and on. And I responded to him. I said, I haven't had a bank account since 1969. Haven't signed a check since then. And I think when I closed down my bank account in 1969, I had about $51. And I said, so I don't know so much about being a billionaire, but I know a lot of people like you. But if what you're saying is what you believe, why do you work so hard for money? Would you like to hear his reply? I really liked his reply. It was so honest. He said, money cannot buy the most important things in life, but it's nice to have the things that money can buy. That balance is really a sacred principle that I think we should understand. Values are so very, very important. They bring fulfillment to life. They bring meaning to life. They bring direction to society. And leaders, how we lead, establish the values of a family, of friends, of a company, of a society. Ethical leadership is values that have a long-term benefit for people, not just something quick and easy and then the values are gone. Engaging in things that are cheating or deliberately hurting others for our own purposes. It's short-term, you can get something, but then there's an emptiness within ourselves. And what's the legacy we leave for our children? What's the legacy we leave for the world? Can I tell a little story?
Please.
This is a story, I don't know how accurate it is, but I was told this story when I was a little boy, and it really affected me, because I was born and raised in Chicago. The story goes, you probably heard it, that there was an excellent lawyer. This particular lawyer was so good at manipulating the law. He was on demand. And this is in the 1920s, 1930s. So the mafia in Chicago really wanted him. And they paid him huge sums of money. And he was keeping them out of prison. Somehow or other, whatever was charged, he was part of the team that was helping them to get out of every charge. So he had a magnificent mansion in the heart of the city. He had his own airplane, his own boat. He could go on vacations anytime he wanted. He had a son, and he gave his son everything. But at a certain point, he questioned himself. I've given my son every type of material luxury and enjoyment, but there's one thing I haven't given him. I haven't given him a father that has taught him values. In fact, everything I've taught him is just everything I've given is behind the scene opposite. And he came to a conclusion. The only way I could teach my son values is if I testify and expose these people. Because I'm making millions, and they're making millions. And thousands are suffering. He knew he would probably die if he did it. But he did. He testified against the Chicago Mafia, and he put some of them in prison. And one day he was... I'm sorry, sometimes us Swamis get carried away. But he was in his car, and he was shot with machine guns, and he was dead in an alleyway. He was willing to sacrifice his life to give his son a father that he could be proud of instead of ashamed of. Now, there's another story. It's a story of an airline pilot during World War II. The name of that lawyer was Easy Eddie. It's good to know his name. Now, an unrelated story. there was a airline pilot. He was on the USS Lexington, and they were fighting in the Pacific. And he went with a fleet of other warplanes to attack some place where the Japanese were, had their base. Mm-hmm. And while he was going, he saw that the person who fueled the plane didn't give him enough fuel. He would have never made it there and back. So he turned around back to the warship. These battleships had thousands and thousands of sailors and soldiers and pilots on them. So he was going back to the ship, and on his way back, he was all alone, and a whole fleet of Japanese bombers he saw were heading right to the ship, and they were not prepared. They were going to bomb it and sink it. So he single-handedly attacked them. I think there were 9 of them. And they were shooting at him, and he was shooting at them, and they were going all over the place. And I believe he shot down 3 planes. And by this time, he was out of ammunition, and he just started flying at their wings to cut them off. He really wanted to save that plane. He was risking his life. And the bombers who he was opposing, they came to the conclusion, this man is a madman. We're all going to die. So they all flew away. And meanwhile, the people on the ship saw this. So when he landed, his plane was all beaten up, and he was the first person in the American Air Force during World War II to get the Medal of Honor. And his name was Butch O'Hara. And they named O'Hara Airport after him. He was one of the greatest of all the heroes of World War II. It's interesting to know that Butch O'Hara was the son of Easy Eddie. Oh. He saved thousands and thousands of lives and was willing to make a great sacrifice to do it because he had a father who was a leader who taught him selfless service, values that we're willing to make sacrifices for. And really, that's what greatness is. Greatness isn't about how much we accumulate. It's about the example of our life and how we can uplift other people to these higher values. I forgot your question, but I hope it answers it.
I was like, so. Thank you so much for that. You shared 2 wonderful stories that had the common theme of self-sacrifice for the benefit of another. And one thing that I believe is incredibly challenging about leadership is many leaders are willing to make all the sacrifices when it comes to them for the causes they believe in. But the nature of leadership is such that to succeed at your goals, oftentimes you have to take many risks, okay? And on the one hand, you're taking many risks for yourself. That's one thing. But when you're a leader, you're also taking a lot of risks on behalf of others. And you make a lot of sacrifices yourself as a leader, but also you make decisions on who is sacrificing what. And sometimes that's the lives of others. Whether they live or die is based on your decisions, based on your leadership sometimes. So what I wanted to ask you is, on the one hand, there's the self-sacrifice, but on the other hand, when you're carrying the responsibility of so many others and you have to make these hard decisions to lead, to make decisions, make the right decisions, how do you navigate the weight of that? And how do you do it in an ethical way? Because there's every chance, as a leader, if your cause is meaningful enough, there's probably pretty good chance you're not going to make it because it's so lofty and it's so hard. And these people are following you, they're depending on you. And you don't know yourself if you're going to succeed. So how, as a leader, when you're trying to set such a good example with your values, with the direction that you're going, how do you balance that with the fact that there's an uncertain future and all these people following you, their outcomes really depend on you? And how do you deal with that responsibility?
That's an easy question.
I told you it would be so easy.
Thank you. Thank you. The idea of the word yoga, which is a Sanskrit word, is harmony or unity. And it begins with harmonizing the mind, the body, the intelligence with the heart and with the soul. Compassion, to actually care about the well-being of others, is the standard of greatness and the standard of ethical leadership. There, in different places in the world, there are different interpretations of the technical conduct of what ethical is. But the universal principle is respect and concern for the sacredness of the lives of others, and not to, the golden rule, do unto others as you would like them to do to you, and to not do to others what you would not want them to do to you. That's a universal principle of ethics. And that care, that compassion, that respect for life. And in my tradition, there's this beautiful book, the Bhagavad-Gita. And as Jay explained, when I was a teenager, I was hitchhiking around the world looking for meaning, looking for purpose, because I was a teenager in the 1960s. And there was a civil rights. I joined the civil rights movement because I just couldn't tolerate how people of another color were condemned to live in ghettos their whole lives in those days. And minority religions where there was so much hate, even in the name of loving gods. And there was the Vietnam War, which just didn't make sense. So I became quite rebellious, and I was asking a lot of questions. And I came to a certain conclusion: unless I change myself, I can't really be a change in the world. And I really wanted things to change. So I was traveling the world studying the various religions of America, of Europe, of the Middle East, and then India. And I remember this one particular verse from the Bhagavad-Gita. It had such an impact on me. I thought, this is it. I considered it the heart of all religion, of spirituality, and of all humanity. May I tell you? The Sanskrit is Vidyavanaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastini Suni Chaiva Svapake Cha Pandita Samadarshana. That what is the meaning of enlightenment? What is the meaning of wisdom? This principle is at the heart of human ethics. It is to see every living being with equal vision, to see the sacredness of life wherever there's life, whether one is black or white or red or yellow or brown in color, whether one is a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh or a Parsi or a Jain or a Buddhist or an agnostic or an atheist, a male or a female, whether one is from one social background, economic background or another. To respect the right for the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And of course, the Bhagavad-Gita extends to even whether one is a human or a dog or a cat or an elephant or a cow, to respect the sacredness of life. And this very much includes the environment, because everyone is dependent on the condition of the environment. So if we're compassionate to other people, we live in a way that's in harmony with our compassion. I considered, and I understood so many of the greatest thinkers throughout history, they considered this idea to be at the heart of ethics: respect and appreciation, unity and diversity with all of our differences for others. So if we can value that compassion, try to cultivate that compassion, try to be with people who bring out that compassion from within us, then we have something very meaningful to live with. And then our intelligence, if we have a meaningful purpose, it may be our business, maybe our family, it may be politics, but then with our good intelligence, we utilize it to the fullest extent. Research, because we care. If we actually care, we give the best we can. And we, like-minded persons come together in the same way. So challenges will come, risks will come, sacrifices will come. But it's really important that we really understand the subject as thoroughly as possible. We understand the various alternatives of how to address a situation. And we do it in harmony with this principle of respect and compassion for the sacredness of life, to uplift people.
I love that. So,
and I've seen it. You know, you might think it's easy for a Swami because, you know, I just kind of float around. But there's a person. Could I continue?
Please.
There's a person who's a very, very dear friend of mine in India. He actually passed away recently. When I came back from this travel, you know, through Europe, the Middle East, India, I came back with what is India called a sadhu. It's like a very hardcore ascetic. And when I returned to my family to visit, they were in total culture shock. And actually I was too, because I was living in caves in the Himalayan mountains and they had a nice apartment. I said, I haven't slept inside a building in years. And they thought I was some sort of caveman. I took it as a compliment, but that's not the way they intended it. My mother and father grew up in the Great Depression, so they really worked hard for everything. And they were coming from, their parents were immigrant Jewish people from Eastern Europe. So they really were trying to understand me, and I was trying to understand them, and we tried. And we loved each other, and we respected each other, and everything was very sweet. But deep down, they really didn't get it. Until somehow or other, they came to India for the first time. And when they came to India, they stayed at the house of this one man. His name is Aravind Mafetlal. And at one time, his family was the third wealthiest, most successful family in the entire country of India. And he was perhaps the most sincerely compassionate philanthropist of India. When my father and mother came to their home, that month, it just so happened, the Business Week magazine of India, the front cover was this man's face. And it said, "The conscience of India's industry." He had huge textile mills, he had huge oil refineries, he had so many different sectors of his business. And he was, not only him, but all his shareholders, they were all giving a certain percentage of the profits to charities. And not only did he just give it to charities, but he made sure that charities were doing everything for people. And he started his own charities. He was doing hundreds and thousands of free eye operations every year for people who would have gone blind. He was doing so many things. In fact, that year, the International Lions Club, it was in Minnesota, I think, in a stadium, they gave him the award of the Humanitarian of the Year. Now, at this time, he's an extremely wealthy person, living in a beautiful home, but had such a simple, humble heart who wanted to help. His motto was, "God has entrusted this to me. I'm not the owner of any of this. I'm the caretaker. And a caretaker must use it for everyone." And that's what he did. And when he first met my father, he showed him around some of his companies and my mother, and they were so impressed. And one day, Arvind Mafetlal said to my father, "You and me, we are nothing compared to your son." And my father and mother, they almost fall off their chairs. They said, "What are you talking about? He has nothing. He wears the same little sheets every day." And you have mansions, and you have companies, and you have so many political connections, and you're helping so many millions of people. What are you talking about? He said, "Because your son is honestly trying to live with compassion and values, and he has a spiritual connection." My mother and father began to cry, and from that day on, they were proud of me. In fact, they came back, and my brother was Jewish. He married a Catholic wife. They had a child. Should we baptize the child in the church or bless him in a synagogue? And my mother and father said, "Well, our opinion is have him baptized in a Krishna temple because your son is a priest." So all their grandchildren, I got to make up a little ceremony for them. But this man, Arvind Mafetlal, when he died, many of the biggest people of India came to his memorial service, and they were speaking. And in Indian industry's history, he spearheaded things that were never done before. His company was the first major company to make an alliance with a major company in Europe. Nobody talked anything about those things. They only talked about his compassion, his fairness to everyone. his kindness, because that's what touches people's heart. Things could give some sort of pleasure to the bodily senses and to the mind, but things can never give fulfillment to the heart. The heart is yearning, longing, ultimately crying to love and be loved. That's the only experience that could give true satisfaction to the heart. And love is in giving, in receiving and giving in a reciprocal way. So here was a man who was running huge international industries, businesses, corporations, but everything that was built on the foundation of respect, love, and care. And I used to have long talks with him. And he would tell me that in business, you have to do a lot of things because there's such competition, but there has to be a line drawn of you don't go beyond that line in regard to respect and hurting people, in regard to dishonesty. You have to draw that line, that ethical line, and you have to live by that. And then your business actually becomes really meaningful. So sacrifices, risks, courage, it's there. But our heart should be awakened. And then with that awakened heart, with care, we use all of our intelligence and all of our resources to really plan out and execute what will be the best course of action.
Thank you so much. Wonderful answer. That's it. So my key two takeaways from the wonderful stories you shared is no matter what you're going through, of course, be prepared, do your best, but make sure that your heart is in the right place. Don't stray from that, and then make sure to draw the lines that you're not going to cross so that you can be true to yourself. So
everything I tried to say in such a long time, you said it.
Just want to make sure I crystallize. So I remember for tomorrow and beyond. One of the things you said that was really beautiful at the beginning was that it was the time of the civil rights movement, Vietnam War. You wanted to go out there and make an impact. But first you knew you had to start with yourself. And for all of us living here in New York City, we all wake up and very few of us are relaxed, when you wake up. And feels like you're going into battle every day. And we love it. We love the energy, but it's hard. And for many of us, sometimes we have the opportunity to go somewhere for an extended period and, gain that perspective. But many times there's long stretches where it's day after day, week after week, month after month. It's a struggle every single day. And it's hard sometimes to make space for that reflection, for that perspective. So to be a great leader, when we want to set the right example for everyone and we want to do our best, if we ourselves are not at our best, it's difficult to do. So what would be some suggestions you would make to everybody here, these friendly New Yorkers, about how best to gain that perspective on a daily basis so that no matter how busy it gets, no matter how hard it gets, how we overcome? They are friendly, right?
You are so friendly. I feel so much at home. Thank you for being so gracious, kind. It's a beautiful gathering. Thank you, Barry. And thank you, Jay Shetty, wherever you may be. When you wake up in the morning here in New York City, How many of you eat something or drink something after you wake up, before you go to work? And for most of us, we eat because it gives us energy, it gives us strength. Otherwise, we can't cope with the pressures and the stresses and the endeavors that are required in the workplace if we don't have proper sleep and proper food. That's for the body. And the condition of the body very much does affect the mind. You know, if you're really weak and hungry, then your mind becomes very affected too. So the human spirit is what we're really talking about. The human spirit needs nourishment. And somehow or other, because it appears to us to be intangible, we don't give that much importance to it. Our tendency is we give so much importance to tangible things. And sometimes in this world, people are so obsessed with accumulating quantity that we don't put a focus and appreciation on quality. But the quality of life is what is going to give us fulfillment and what's going to give our loved ones fulfillment. And that's where the greatest contribution that we can make is in the quality of our life. Jay was telling me a few days ago, because he's really incredibly empowered in the social media world. And he was saying that he interviews people who are very, very famous. They may have many, many millions of followers. But if they get some dislikes or just a few people say something nasty about them, they can go deep into depression. That's human nature. So the quality of life is important, and in order to have that quality of human spirit, it doesn't come automatically. We don't get vitamins and minerals automatically. We have to give the time that our human spirit needs. And that coming to an event like tonight, I hope what I'm saying is touching your human spirit. But we need like a feast for our human spirit. And what you're doing is so much for that very purpose, bringing people together to discuss, to share, values beyond just the mechanics of how to work in the world, to nourish that human spirit. Some meditate, some pray, some have a spiritual practice, some read enlightening books, listen to enlightening subjects, whether it's on the internet or on tapes or whatever. But it's important that we regularly feed that spirit by positive association, by positive spiritual practices, by exposing ourselves to positive information that actually enlightens us, illuminates us. And then we have strength. If you build a house on sand, when a storm comes, the house collapses. If you build a house on solid stone, then any storm will come and the house will stand. So it's important each day or at least on a regular basis, we invest in the foundation of our life, which is giving time to inspire us in our values, in our character, in the deeper direction that we want our life to go. Because we know for sure in this world there will be storms. It's not maybe they will come. Whether we're a mother or a father, or whether in business or politics or farming or engineering or science or philanthropy, even for swamis like me, so many storms. It's the way the world is. But we could grow through those storms if we give attention to that inner foundation of our human spirit.
Well, not just with your answer, but with your presence, you've definitely nourished our soul and spirit tonight. So I can't thank you enough for being here once again, and thank you for that wonderful answer. I'd like to open it up to the audience to hear what everybody has in mind. So if you've got a question, if you can please raise your hand. I'd love to hear from you. All right. So if you could please say your name.
I think subconsciously, when you told me that all your questions would be difficult, I think subconsciously I gave long answers just so I wouldn't get so many questions.
Good tactic. I like it.
It wasn't a tactic. It just happened that way.
You're wonderful.
Thank you. Please.
So, apologize if you may have answered this during your speech, but thank you for such a wonderful speech. I'm Harlan, by the way. And as you talk about quality of life, in my path to spiritual enlightenment, I've encountered a lot of different people with different definitions of quality of life. And can you speak more about that? What does it mean? Is it different for different folks? I know you reference different forms of meditation and different ways of meditating that we all do, but in terms of is there one core quality are we talking about, or does it vary? There's so many different things that influence our behaviors every day, the way we think, the way we work, the way we play. So if you can, I'm not sure if I'm making any sense here, but thank you.
That wonderful question could be addressed from various perspectives, but I'll speak one. The quality that gives true fulfillment, true meaning to life is love. The family, where there's love in a family, it gives, when children are brought up in a loving family, it gives such a quality to their life. They have a context to harmonize whatever they're doing. So really, quality of life in this sense is to value the meaning of love. And the way love is expressed is through respect and compassion. A life that is loved, a life that loves, and a life that expresses through respect and compassion for others is truly a quality life. the world will love a person who has made those sacrifices for a higher cause. It's not that this is something very ethereal, something spiritual that cannot be applied to the real world here in New York City. Where there's the greatest necessity, there's the greatest opportunity to make a difference. And actually, in my time coming to New York City, I see some of the most enlightened people are extremely engrossed in their careers here. But they have that quality, which is like a compass. Today, we have GPS. Yes? I've seen. When you go in your car and you want to get to a destination, some people have it in their car, some people have it on their cellular phones, and you have to type an address. If you don't type an address, the GPS has nowhere to take you. And then you type it, let us say, Madison Square Garden. I know that place.
I think that's the one place I could find from here without GPS. We're very close.
Okay, so name a place that you can't find without GPS.
Union Square.
Union Square, okay. So for someone like me coming from India, I don't even know what Union Square is. But you type Union Square, and let's say you're driving from Boston, Massachusetts, and you're trying to get to Union Square. So there's a little voice and all these little directions that come on the screen, and they say, now in 15 miles, turn at this exit. And then when you're following, you have to drive. You have to have your seatbelt on. You have to follow all the laws. You have to know, when truck drivers cut you off, you have to be prepared for anything. But still, you have a direction you're going. And then you enter New York City, and there's a traffic jam. And it's not the way you want it to go, but you're still following the GPS. And then it says, in 500 feet, turn right. And you're driving and you're driving and you get distracted and you miss the turn. The voice says, recalibrating. And then tells you how to get back to where you're supposed to go. So life is like that. Quality of life is, we need a standard of what meaningful quality life is. And we type that in the GPS of our life. That's the compass. And inevitably, we're going to get distracted. But when we get distracted because we have a direction we want to go, we recalibrate. Recalibrating means we learn from our mistakes, because we make mistakes. We don't get all depressed about our mistakes. We don't give up and get discouraged. We just understand, I have to learn from this lesson, but now I have to go in the right direction. And then whatever we're doing, we're going in a proper, toward a meaningful goal in our life. And it's very important that we have a goal, we have a purpose. And that's what gives our life actual meaning, what gives our life actual fulfillment, the legacy that we want to hand down to our children and grandchildren, the example. And we're all leaders in that way. How we want the employees of our company to actually treat each other and the customers and everyone. We want to exemplify these things. And keep the GPS of our life turned on and moving forward. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
I like what you said. So anytime, as long as we know our destination, no matter where we fail, where we stumble along the way, I think it's a good reminder just to say, oh, recalibrating. It's fine. Get back on the path. I love that. Next question. Who's got one? All right, go ahead.
Yes, in continuation of the last question.
Your name, please?
My name is Barry as well.
Oh, wonderful name.
I haven't met a Barry I didn't love.
I share that sentiment. Yeah.
I see you. In an age where we ask Google so many questions, we ask Siri and Alexa so many questions, can we be present to what are the questions you would invite us to ask as we travel this journey in this game of life?
It's a question about questions. I love it.
Who really am I? Who really am I? And what is it I really want in my life? I'm the spirit, the living force within. And I'm looking for pleasure. And as we explained, the pleasure for the heart is to love and be loved. So how could I live and with my GPS focused on that quality, how could I live and come closer to that meaningful, fulfilling purpose in life? How could I love and be an instrument of love? And we can be like that in American politics. We can be like that in science. We can be like that as astronauts. We could be like that as little shopkeepers. The external situation is not really what's important in life. It's asking this question. Who really am I? And how can I truly be the best I am? For myself, for my family, for others.
Thank you so much. Next question, who has the microphone? All right, over here.
Hi, my name is Olivia, and we're actually live streaming this event. So this question comes from a member who doesn't live in New York City. I've been monitoring their questions, so I'll share one of theirs. Her name is Erica, and this question is about how to be an ethical leader when maybe you're not the boss yet. So she says, how do you manage up ethical leadership, creating a culture for those above you and at your same level?
By our example. Actions speak louder than words. Through our words and through our example, we could have a powerful impact on others. And a good leader is very open to learn from those who she or he is leading. And a good leader could be the person who's sweeping the floors. The power of a compassionate, respectful, sincere example can have a major impact on people. In Mumbai, we have developed a hospital. It's called the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. It's a 300-bed hospital. And it's an interesting hospital because it has all the main branches of allopathy. They do open heart surgeries, and they do cancer surgeries. And whenever I go there, there's all these little tiny babies in incubators. So they do all of that. Some is very complex. But we also have a wing for Ayurveda, a wing for naturopathy, a wing for homeopathy, a wing for yoga therapy. So all these natural sciences of medicine. Because medicine is like religion, that you could really think that this is the way and everything else is either poisoning the world with chemicals or everything else is just witchcraft and superstition. But what we found is every one of these fields of medicine is really helping people. Certain people benefit better from different ones in different circumstances, so they're all serving together. But what happened is there was a crisis at the hospital at one time. It's a little complicated to explain, but somehow or other everything was trying to be managed from the top down. And we developed a culture of really learning how to appreciate the sincerity of everyone. So the people in the housekeeping department that are cleaning the toilets really feel as important as anybody else because they're doing their service. In the human body, we have many organs, and each has a different function, a different color, a different shape. But a healthy body is when every organ is respecting, appreciating, and empowering every other organ. If the stomach thinks that I have all this food in me, why should I give it to you, brain and heart? You're all depending on me. I'm going to keep it. What happens to the body? The brain cannot do what the kidneys do. The kidneys cannot do what the pancreas does. The pancreas cannot do what the heart does. But if you stub your littlest of all toes, which is not very significant compared to the brain and the heart and the lungs, every single part of the body will send blood and healing energy to that little toe. That's a healthy body, where every part of the body is there for each other. There's no significant and insignificant. And that type of value is very important. So on whatever level we're in, we could be a leader by doing our service with integrity, with intelligence, doing it the best we possibly can, and living a good example. And everyone in the hospital, that's kind of the motto, because they have to really be professional. When you're doing an open heart surgery for somebody, you can't just think, well, it's time for me to pray. You have to be there. The anesthesists and the surgeons, everyone's together as a team. So efficiency in our professionalism, but doing it in an exemplary way, in the way we treat others. And we can have a great effect. Sometimes it takes time for the effect to be apparent. But we're not so concerned with the immediate results. We're concerned that before God, before my own soul, according to my own moral values. I'm trying my best. I'm as effective as I could be, as professional as I could be, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. And that will have an effect in due course of time.
Thank you so much. I love that analogy to the body. It was wonderful. Thank you very much. Next question. Does somebody have the mic? Oh, let's go over there in the back.
Hi, my name is Ikram, and my question, I think many people in the room might relate to it. I wonder what is the best way to talk about politics today, where I know and feel that the people I'm talking about have crossed that boundary that you mentioned, the line of ethics and compassion, in a way that doesn't make me someone as well who crosses that boundary and start becoming either judgmental or angry or not productive and just like getting in this like fight of like you did, they did. Thank you.
I tried to bypass your difficult questions, but
This is the easiest one, American politics, yeah.
Well, I'm not from any political party. I'm for all political parties. Some things we have the power to change, and some things apparently we do not. But according to our capacity, according to our influence, we could really do the best we can. Because a compassionate life is a life of an activist. Complacency is never a virtue. Determination, enthusiasm, and activism. But we have to situate it in a way that is out of love. What I found in my life is what gives the greatest courage, actual courage, not just a facade of courage, but actually from the heart where we have courage. It's when we have humility. Because we have values, and we're not going to move from those values. And we could feel a higher power coming through us when we have those values, and we live by them. And that brings great courage. What we find in the world today is people's insecurities. We try to hide them from others and even hide them from ourselves by becoming very arrogant and very unforgiving and like that. That's human nature. But that's really a weakness. And sometimes the weakest people appear to be very strong. And then people may be strong externally, but internally. And that's values are, how our external is in harmony with our internal values. So throughout history, there's been good politics, there's been distracted politics. The politicians need a good GPS. And really the constitution of a nation is supposed to be the GPS. But if we don't have values within ourselves, we twist all that around and make it something it's not. So I'll give a little story. Every year there's a particular house I give a lecture in Mumbai. And this house has been there for well over 100 years. It's a historical house. It's just one family living there. And it's a big house. It's almost like a museum. They have several living rooms. And one living room they have kept exactly the way it was back in the 1940s and 30s. Because in that living room, Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, Sarojini Patel, they would meet. There was just like about a dozen of them. They would meet to discuss removing the British from India. Now, this is before World War II. The British Empire, in those days, the saying, the sun never sets in the British Empire. And India was the crown jewel of the British Empire. So they weren't going to give that up. But they were discussing, we will do it. And it was just about a dozen people just discussing it, making plans, willing to make sacrifices for it. And they did it. The lesson I learn whenever I'm there in that living room is even if something seems insurmountable and impossible, how are we going to deal with climate change in the world today? Can we really solve it? Can I really solve it if I, turn the water faucet off so that I don't waste unnecessary water, or turn my lights out, or, choose a certain type of, food and clothing? What difference does it make? But actually, each and every person can make a huge, significant difference by just living with integrity and striving to bring out the good. And these people from this living room, from 12, it became 20 and 50 and 100 and 100,000. And soon they had millions of people with them. And they all went to jail. But they were enlivened to go to jail for a good cause. So I may be speaking things that may not directly apply to what we can do, but the principle we can. What are the true values of the Constitution? All men are created equally. How is this? What are the great things that are the actual foundation of a nation, of a society, of humanity? And to live by that. And to be an activist for that. And to unite, even though so many people have differences in so many ways, we unite on higher principles together to actually make a difference in the world. And we can. If we don't think we can, then we can't. But if we think we can because we actually can. We have to see that there's always hope, there's always opportunity. We're trying for big change, but even if we make a little, when I hitchhiked from London to the Himalayas, it was just one step at a time. And sometimes I would stand on the side of the road for 3 days and nobody would pick me up in an Arabian desert. But even, I didn't just stand. If nobody was picking me up, I would just walk in that direction. And somehow or other, every destination needs perseverance. Does that answer your question a little? Don't go to jail, but but those people were willing to do that.
I want to segue from that question.
Please.
You've had this incredible journey, I mean, including your hitchhiking from one part of the world to another, but also across all of these years, across all these different countries where you do your work and spread your message. When you look at the world today and you look ahead and you contrast it to the world that you've lived through so far, what are the things that you're most excited and optimistic and pleased about as you look to the future? And what are the things that concern you the most? What are the biggest challenges that you think we're facing?
Well, events like this in New York City are some of the best hope-giving experiences for New York City.
Great.
But there's so many differences. How times change. When I hitchhiked through Afghanistan, from Herat, Kandahar to Kabul, through the Khyber Pass, in those days, there was like a subculture of people who were hitchhiking all over the world who had little or no money. And they were all looking for something either spiritual or something deeply meaningful. None of them were tourists, because it was just too hard of a life for a tourist. And when we would meet people who we knew were on that path, traveling so many different places in the world, we would kind of exchange our experiences. And something that was really interesting, everyone would share that the friendliest people that they've ever experienced were in Afghanistan. And I had that experience. The people, it was the poorest country I've ever been in at the time. But the people were so kind, so gracious. And it was just beautiful. They just wanted to give. It was beautiful. But then, of course, some years later, there was an invasion, and then they had to mobilize militaries and everything. And when I was releasing my first book in London, at the University of London, after my talk speaking about hitchhiking across the world, this one girl came up to me. She was a senior in college. She said, "I really loved your story." And she said, "The reason why is I am the president of the All England Hitchhikers Association." And she said, "I wish to bring a group of my people on the same route to India that you did, through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan." Now, when you give advice, you have to take responsibility for the... So I got a little afraid. I said, my advice is hitchhike to Heathrow Airport. And then you have to take a flight to India. You can't do that anymore. So things have changed. The world has changed in so many ways. But with all the terrorism and the conflict in politics in Europe and America and everything that's going on in so many places, there is a certain polarization. And many people are becoming very thoughtful. During that collapse that took place some years ago on Wall Street, due to corruption. When I came to New York that year from India, it was amazing how many people were asking sincere questions. It's like some people were living in a bubble that this is what a great life is. This is what a meaningful and fulfilling life is, to have so much. But when they saw people who have so much did it at the expense of so many others, that bubble burst. They were asking questions. They were looking for a deeper meaning. It's not that they didn't want to continue their careers, but they were searching. What is it that we need in this world? What is it that I want in my life? In the 1960s, there was problems, and it was those problems that caused me in my own life to really start asking questions. It kind of broke me out of my complacency. So the struggles and difficulties of the world, we could be depressed about them. We could feel hopeless about them. We could feel arrogant that I'm going to change everything. Or we could actually respond to them by having deeper thoughts and reflections of what do I want to contribute to the world? What do I want to be in this world? What is values? What is integrity? What do I want my children to have and my grandchildren to have when they grow up in this world? And according to my capacity, how could I be that? And how could I find more and more and more and more people who share those values? And how can we all together make a difference? That situation's the same. Problems in the world change in form, but they're always there. Corruption is always there. But how can we make a difference? Questioning, coming out of our complacency, that opportunity is also always there.
Mm-hmm. So whatever the challenges are, use them to actually ask deeper questions, go deeper, and recalibrate our GPS even better.
Thank you. Just like that. Everything I try to say, he says it. It's so encapsulated.
Once you give the answer, it's easy to summarize. So
we need to see challenges as opportunities because they really are.
Yeah. You shared so many messages throughout this evening that always came back to the same core values. So it's all about do your absolute best, don't be complacent, but also never forget like that where it's all coming from, the love, the compassion, what's most important, having that true north. And also your comment about nourishing the soul. I think, this gathering and all the messages that you shared are a perfect example of that. And before we wrap up, because unfortunately we're out of time, I want to just give 2 potential calls to action to everybody here. One is if you could kind of turn and make eye contact with somebody you don't know. So try to catch someone's eye and make eye contact and do a little wave. Okay, remember that person. Don't forget who it is. So what I'd like you to do is, not right now, but once we wrap up, and maybe once you go to the restroom, grab a drink, whatever, but find each other again and share with each other what's the one thing that you're going to do differently tomorrow based on the conversation that we had tonight. So just find that person that you made eye contact with and do that once we've wrapped up. That's number 1. The second one is at Ivy, we get to have so many gatherings, so many meaningful conversations. This is at the very, very top of, the depth and impact of what you shared is the epitome of what we are all about. One new initiative we started at Ivy, specifically on this topic, is the leadership circle. So we're bringing our members together in groups of 8 to 10 to go really deep in their personal and professional and family challenges and opportunities and have those deeper conversations. And for me, it's been the most nourishing of the soul when you share really deeply. So that's something else that I'd encourage you to look into. And as we wrap up, I guess the biggest thing I want to say is that what you shared with us today was invaluable. It was truly food for the soul that will remain for a long time. So I'm extremely thankful that you joined us tonight. And I hope that we can all support you on your journey from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry, and to each and every one of you, thank you so very, very much for your kindness, being so gracious. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. So find the person that you made eye contact with and join us at the bar. And please come say hello if you'd like to. Cannot thank you enough. That was so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.